Um, Welcome once again to our English channel. And today I'm going to continue with communicative grammar, but today we are going to move to Unit 3. In this Unit 3, we are going to look at active and passive voice. We are going to look at active and passive voice. We have to be aware that all the sentences we make in life, in whichever language, we are either making them in active voice or we are making them in passive voice. That is what we are supposed to be aware. And there are reasons or situations that call for active voice, and there are situations that call for passive voice. So in this unit, that's exactly what we are going to look at. We are going to look at both active and passive voice. So today we are going to look at lesson 1 under unit 3, that is active and passive voice. So you are probably already familiar with the active and passive voices. That is what I cannot say, that is a new thing coming to you. And if you even don't know, you do it unconsciously without knowing, but that is the fact. So however, to successfully speak English, you must learn to recognize the forms, uses, and differences of active and passive voices. So I'm saying that it is very important, first of all, we look at the forms, we look at the uses, and differences in as far as active and passive voice is concerned. Thus, now we will discuss about this special form of the voice called active voice. So today our lesson is on active voice. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that it is, I'm saying it is the most common one. Active voice, it is the most common one. How? This is the voice that we use most of the time. That is it. So that gives it the aspect of commonness. In active sentences, the thing doing the action is the subject of the sentence, and the thing receiving the action is the object. So we're saying that in active voice, that which is doing the action is the subject, the doer of the action, and that which is receiving the action, that is the object. That is object. So what we are saying here is that when it comes to to active and a passive voice, so in this, sorry, they are most okay, fine. So I'm just saying that active voice has a form. It has a form, and the form is the thing doing action plus the verb plus the thing receiving action. He ate food. Look at that. He, thing doing the action. Ate, verb. Food, thing receiving action. Yeah. So what am I saying? What is it? Okay. So in the active voice, the object receives the action of the verb. The object receives the action of the verb. Example, active, in active you can say cats eat fish. Cats eat fish. Cats, that is subject, eat verb, and fish object. Let us move to the passive voice. Let us move to the passive voice. So it is less usual. When we talk about passive voice, it is less usual, meaning it's not very usual that we use passive voice. So in passive sentences, the thing receiving the action is the subject of the sentence, and the thing doing the action is just a minute. Sorry for some interference, but we have to go on. So what we are saying is the object takes the position of the subject in passive voice. So you can use the passive form for the following reasons, because the question is, when do we use active voice, and when do we use, or where do we use passive voice? There are three reasons. There are three reasons we use passive voice. Number one, if you think that the thing receiving the action is more important or should be emphasized, we use passive voice when we think that the thing receiving action, and that is the object, is more important than the subject. That's when we use passive voice. For example, you know, there is water inside here. I'm the subject. Then there is drink, the verb. So instead of saying, I drink water, now I start with water and end with me. So I would say, water is drunk. I'll just say it's drunk because I'm not interested in mentioning myself. So I can just say, water is drunk. Water is drunk. Food is eaten. Food is eaten. Market is gone. Market is gone. So I'm not interested in mentioning the subject. So when we are not interested in mentioning the subject, that is when we use passive voice. Number two, if you do not know who is doing the action or who did the action. So, like for example, when you look at this building, it was built long ago. I don't know who built it. So I cannot start with the subject because I don't know who built it. But I'll just say this building was painted nicely. This building was painted nicely. Look at that. I have not mentioned the subject, but I've only mentioned the object. So I've just said this building has been painted nicely. So number two, we use passive voice when we don't know who did the action or we don't know who is doing the action. Number three, we use passive voice if we do not want to mention who is doing the action. We don't want to mention. We just don't want to mention. Yeah. Food is eaten. Water is drunk. Floor is swept. Market is gone. We don't want to mention the subject. We don't want to mention the subject. So we are saying passive voice has also its form. There is first, on your left-hand side, thing receiving action. That's the object. Then plus be, the mother of auxiliary verbs, be, plus past participle of verb, then plus by, plus the thing doing the action. That's the form. So if it was water, for example, you can say water is drunk by Philemon. So B has given us is. Water is drunk. I'm now using drunk of D-R-U-N-K, not drunk of D-R-A-N-K, because drunk of D-R-A-N-K is the past tense of drink, but D-R-U-N-K is the past participle of drink or drunk. Get me clear? So that is it. So the passive is formed by using the verb to be followed by the past participle. So the object can be a noun or a pronoun. Then you add to be, then you add past participle. Water is drunk. Food is eaten. Food is eaten. So let us look at how we change. You can be given an active sentence and you have to change it into passive voice. So, for example, someone washes the car every week. Someone washes the car every week. That is active voice. How do we put it in passive voice? You say, the car is washed every week. The car is washed every week. Let us look at another example. They make these televisions in Japan. They make these televisions in Japan. The passive voice will be, these televisions are made in Japan. These televisions are made in Japan. Another good example, someone painted the house last week. Someone painted the house last week. So the passive form here will be, the house was painted last week. The house was painted last week. Okay. Another example, they taught the children to be polite. They taught the children to be polite. Okay. Passive voice. The children were taught to be polite. The children were taught to be polite. However, not every sentence in the active can be changed into the passive. That is something you have to note. Not all active sentences can be changed into passive voice. The passive should be restricted to these three uses. The passive should be restricted to these three uses. Number one, when the performer of the action is unknown. That's when we don't know who does or did the action. Like, my briefcase was stolen last night. Yeah, I don't know who stole it. Then number two, when it is unnecessary to state who the performer of the action is, when it is not important to know who does or did the action. So you can say the cars are taken to Europe every week. It doesn't matter who takes them. Yeah, these televisions are made in China. It doesn't matter who makes them. Okay, in a situation number three, when we wish to draw the attention to the subject rather than the agent. I mean, when we wish to draw the attention to the object rather than the subject. So you can say President Kennedy was killed by a bullet. President Kennedy was killed by a bullet. His sister was knocked down by a bus. His sister was knocked down by the bus. In the first and second pairs of examples, no mention is made of the performer of the action. It would therefore be quite unrealistic to try to render the same ideas in the active. It will not work. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that the passive voice is especially helpful and even regarded as mandatory in scientific or technical writing or lab reports where the actor is not really important, but the process or principle being described is of ultimate importance. The result says this. Yeah. So we use the passive voice to good effect in a paragraph in which we wish to shift emphasis from what was the object in the first sentence to what becomes the subject in the subsequent sentences. Example, instead of writing, I poured 20 cc of acid into the beaker. That's when you are in the library, in the laboratory. We would write it like this. 20 cc of acid is poured into the beaker or was poured into the beaker. We would better write it that way. So I'm saying that the passive voice is also useful when describing a process in which the details of process are much more important than anyone's taking responsibility for the action. So first, like you can say, first, the coffee seed is roasted. Instead of saying roast in the library, roast this, and that. You can, a laboratory, you cannot say that. So in the passive voice, the subject receives the action of the verb. The subject receives the action of the verb. Fish are eaten by cats. Fish are eaten by cats. The object of the active verb becomes the subject of the passive verb. Look at this example. Everybody drinks water. That's active. Everybody drinks water. Now, passive, you say, water is drunk by everybody. Water is drunk by everybody. And therefore, this brings us to the end of lesson 1 under unit 3, that is active and passive voice. In our next lesson, that is second lesson under unit 3, we shall be looking at conjugation for the passive voice. We shall be looking at conjugation for passive voice. So what I want to give as a summary here is that when it comes to active and passive voice, you find that active voice uses fewer words, but passive voice uses many words. So when you are summarizing a passage, you are summarizing a story, it is advisable to use active voice because you will use fewer words. That's my piece of advice. Therefore, I'm saying that we can be able to change active voice sentence to passive voice sentence. And I'm just saying that when we are changing to passive voice, you find the object takes the position of the subject in the passive voice sentence, and the verb that it were in active voice, it takes now its past participle. These are simple rules that you are supposed to observe when you are actually changing from active voice to passive voice. Otherwise, thank you very much. And if you are pumping on this video for the first time, please give it a thumb up and subscribe so that you can move along with me and share in this rich knowledge that comes to you from where you are, whether you are in the car, in the bus, you are in the bathroom, you are in the kitchen, you are in the bedroom, you are in the sitting room, you are in the dining room, wherever you are, you're on the way, you can go on learning English, because this is bringing English where you are, so that you don't have a reason to say that I didn't learn English just because I didn't have chance and time to be able to go to classroom. No, I'm bringing classroom up at where you are, at your doorstep. So I appreciate this by subscribing to my YouTube channel and giving me a thumb up, and I'll be encouraged. For any interaction, for any questions, for any comment, please interact with me in the Google class, and I'll be able to respond to your concerns, to your questions, and I'll be able to appreciate your encouragement and your piece of advice. Otherwise, thank you very much.